Imagine an empire so powerful, it ruled 1 out of every 5 humans on Earth. Now picture it bleeding out on a hospital bed, mocked as the sick man of Europe. This is the story of how the Ottoman Empire died, not with a bang, but with 300 years of self-sabotage, foreign betrayal, and a world that left it behind. What killed it? A corrupt army selling its own country for power? A sultan too drunk to rule? Or Europe's greed, slicing it apart like a Christmas turkey? Strap in, we're dissecting history's most infamous collapse, and why its corpse still haunts us today. The cracks in the Ottoman edifice began appearing long before its official diagnosis as the sick man. After Suleiman the Magnificent's death in 1566, the empire entered an era of sultanic stagnation. His successors, like Selim II, nicknamed Selim the Drunkard, prioritized harem intrigues over governance. The Janissaries, once an elite military force, morphed into a parasitic class, vetoing reforms to protect their privileges. Meanwhile, Europe surged ahead. The scientific revolution, the Enlightenment, and the Industrial Revolution reshaped economies and armies. Ottoman scribes, however, dismissed European innovations as trinkets for infidels. By 1700, the empire's GDP per capita was half that of Britain. Trade routes shifted away from Ottoman-controlled Silk Road hubs, starving the treasury. Corruption became endemic. Governors bought their positions, recouping losses by overtaxing peasants. The tulip era of the 1720s symbolized this decay. While sultans obsessed over flower gardens, Russia's Peter the Great built a modern navy. The Ottomans were sleeping through a revolution. By 1800, the empire was a leaking ship. Sultan Selim III recognized the crisis. His new order, Nizam-i-Sedid, proposed radical reforms, European-style infantry units, secular schools, and modern tax codes. But the Janissaries revolted, strangling Selim with a bowstring in 1807. His cousin, Mahmud II, learned from this failure. In 1826, he orchestrated the auspicious incident, bombarding Janissary barracks in Istanbul and massacring thousands. With the old guard gone, Mahmud launched the Tanzimat reforms, secular courts, postal services, and railroads. Yet resistance festered. Religious leaders condemned Tanzimat as un-Islamic, while Balkan Christians, inspired by nationalism, rebelled. Worse, the reforms required money the empire didn't have. Desperate, the Ottomans borrowed from French and British banks at exorbitant rates. By 1875, half the state's revenue went to debt repayments. The sick man was now on life support, kept alive only because Europe feared his collapse would destabilize the continent. Europe's powers circled like vultures. The Eastern question, what to do with the dying empire, dominated 19th century diplomacy. Russia dreamed of controlling the Bosporus Strait, while Britain sought to block Russian expansion by propping up the Ottomans. In the Crimean War, 1853-56, Britain and France even fought alongside the empire to weaken Russia. But this support came at a cost. The 1856 Treaty of Paris forced the Ottomans to grant equality to Christians, a move that alienated Muslim elites. Meanwhile, France seized Algeria, 1830, and Tunisia, 1881. Britain occupied Egypt in 1882, lured by the Suez Canal. Ottoman provinces were picked off one by one. Even the empire's economy became a European playground. Capitulations, tax exemptions for foreign traders, allowed Europeans to dominate commerce. By 1900, Istanbul's markets overflowed with British textiles and French luxury goods, while local artisans starved. The Ottomans weren't just sick, they were being eaten alive. The Balkans became the empire's bleeding wound. Inspired by the French Revolution, Serbs, Greeks, and Bulgarians demanded independence. In 1875, a tax revolt in Herzegovina sparked a regional wildfire. Bulgaria's April Uprising, 1876, saw Ottoman irregulars massacre 30,000 civilians, horrifying Europe. Russia, posing as the Slavs' protector, invaded in 1877, crushing Ottoman armies. At the Congress of Berlin, 1878, the empire lost 40% of its territory and 20% of its population. Serbia, Romania, and Bulgaria gained independence. Britain took Cyprus. Sultan Abdul Hamid II responded with paranoid authoritarianism, censoring newspapers, spying on dissidents, and promoting pan-Islamism to unify Muslims. But the damage was done. The sick man had lost his limbs. Only the heartland remained. In 1914, the Ottomans gambled everything. Lured by German promises to regain lost lands, they joined World War I. The decision proved catastrophic. At Gallipoli, 1915, Mustafa Kemal, later Ataturk, became a hero by repelling Allied forces, but elsewhere, disaster struck. British-backed Arab revolts severed Ottoman ties to Mecca. In 1916, the Sykes-Picot Agreement secretly divided the Middle East between Britain and France. By 1918, the empire was starving. Allied blockades caused famine in Lebanon, killing 200,000. Defeat brought occupation. Greeks invaded Anatolia. France seized Syria. Britain took Iraq. The 1920 Treaty of Sèvres dismembered the empire, leaving only a rump state around Ankara. But from this ashes rose Ataturk. His War of Independence, 1919-23, expelled invaders, abolished the Sultanate, and declared a secular republic. On November 1, 1922, the Ottoman Empire was officially deleted from history. The Ottomans' collapse birthed a fractured Middle East. European-drawn borders ignored ethnic and religious lines, fueling endless conflict. Iraq, cramming Sunnis, Shias, and Kurds into one state, became a tinderbox. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict traces back to Ottoman land laws and British promises. Even Turkey grapples with its Ottoman ghost. Erdogan's neo-Ottomanism clashes with Ataturk's secularism. Meanwhile, jihadist groups like ISIS reviled the empire as a betrayal of true Islam, destroying its relics in their caliphate fantasy. The sick man's demise taught a grim lesson: empires don't die quietly. Their bones fuel future fires. The Ottoman story is a mirror for our age. It warns of the perils of clinging to past glory while the world evolves. It exposes how foreign powers exploit weakness under the guise of aid. Most hauntingly, it reminds us that empires aren't toppled by outsiders alone, they rot from within. As we navigate today's shifting global order, the sick man's demise asks, who will be the next patient in history's emergency room?